Good morning and welcome to our 44th Coffee with the Commissioner event. It's early in the morning, but we're very thankful that we got Janice Gilley, our County Administrator, up this morning to come talk with us. And we also have a very special guest, Scott Luth, who's the Executive Director of the Florida West Economic Development Alliance. Very thankful for both of y'all this morning. Lots to talk about. And, coming on the heels of last week, we had a really fascinating discussion last week. We had Collier Merrill in, and we also had Dr. Rick Harper. We talked about the economic impacts of COVID-19 and how it's really hurt our economy here locally and then nationwide. And it was interesting. We had that meeting Wednesday morning before the jobs numbers came out, and Dr. Harper was concerned that we were going to go from 14.7% unemployment and go even higher. And then, of course, we all know the big surprise numbers that we got. And man, America was roaring back to life, 2.5 million new jobs created. So very, very happy and relieved to see that. The stocks are back to 27,000. So we're moving in the right direction, but I still think we have a lot of work to do. And I know locally, Janice, we've got a lot of folks out of work still. Our tourism industry is hobbling along. I had the opportunity to meet with Julian McQueen, the owner of Innisfree Hotels, yesterday, and he was telling me some of the challenges his team's facing. So we're not out of the woods by a long shot. And then, of course, when you look at the numbers of COVID cases, the new cases are trending upwards. In fact, there's an article in this morning's News Journal that talks about this past week in Florida, every day the number of new cases has exceeded 1,000. So if you look at the trends, it's not the right. The trends are not going in the right direction, right? In other words, it's an upward trend. That would be great if it was a stock you were buying, but this is not good. So lots to talk about, lots of challenges, and I'll get right to it. We typically, obviously, we do these frequently. We typically used to do them out in the field so that we could have citizens sit with us. We could have coffee around a table, talk about what's going on, the big issues in the neighborhoods. But since the COVID pandemic, it's just not safe to do that yet, unfortunately, even though the governor is opening up the state piece by piece, and we're in phase 2 right now. Meanwhile, now everyone in the world is experts on Zoom, and so we have technology, so we can talk to folks remotely and not have to worry about wearing the face costumes or the hazmat suits, and then more people can actually weigh in and speak with us. They can text us questions, Facebook Live us questions, and I have a lot to talk about already. So we'll start right away with County Administrator Janice Gilley. Good morning, and I know that you have an update for us. Good morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the storm this past weekend, Cristobal. I'm very thankful that we didn't get winds any worse than we did. We did have quite a few trees go down. As you may be aware, our teams were out on Sunday night and Monday. Our bucket crews and trucks were out, working on cleaning up that debris. We also had issues where Pensacola Beach, the Casino Beach area, was inundated with sand, and then I know that a lot of folks have asked us about the turtle nest. So we did have 3 turtle nests on the beach, and the one that got the most attention was the Kemp's Ridley turtle. And we do believe that that nest is okay, although the waves did make it all the way up to that nest. But unfortunately, it does look like 2 of our other 2 nests may not have made it through the storm. So that's kind of sad from turtle fans. And but we are definitely trying to keep an eye on the Kemp's Ridley. And then if citizens do still have some debris or some issues, they're always welcome to call our road department and other folks. We're happy to help them continue to clean debris, kind of like we did kind of like pseudo tornado a couple months ago. Highway 399 was closed Monday at Park East, and most of that was just due to the sand covering the road. We will let you know if it's reopened today. I did want to just continue to remind folks that our 3 messages for hurricane season, now that we're into hurricane season, are know your home, know your zone, and know your plan. And part of that strong messaging is due to the fact that because of COVID, we are going to have some shelter limitations, unlike we've had in the past, in terms of the amount of space that we may have, because we do need to spread individuals out. You can still be with your family, but you are going to need to be spread out. And so your home may be the safest place to be. If you do not believe that your home is safe, and if you are required to evacuate, then what we would ask is that have a plan with your family and friends and other associates and acquaintances that maybe you have from church or other social acquaintances, because that may be a better, safer place for you as well. And then finally, I'd just like to mention, I understand that we are seeing some spikes, but as you know, one of the things as part of the continuing opening is that we don't have a percentage higher than 10% in terms of the percentage of positive tests. And
Right.
as of June 7th, I believe the number was 3.9%.
Right.
We have seen as high as 5% in the past couple of days, and I believe maybe even 8%. But when you're having 27,000 new tests, come in maybe daily or every couple of days, I think that we could all expect that those percentages may go up, right? We've done a great job in the state of Florida in terms of testing. And so while that's a plus, it does mean we do have the potential to have some higher numbers than maybe some other states. So just speaking of testing, we still have Community Health Northwest, which is still providing testing. And they have multiple locations and also mobile testing. And so their phone number is available at Community Health Northwest. I also like to share it here, which is 436-4630. Starting today, there'll be walk-up testing at the Moorings apartment on Old Spanish Trail from 9 until noon, until testing supplies last. And then Baptist Healthcare is always available 24/7. You can call them at 434-4080 and get them to do an assessment and then determine your testing. We were able to reopen the UWF. The state was on Tuesday after Cristobal came through, and they're still open 9 to 5 daily unless there is some kind of inclement weather. And then again, the Florida Department of Health has also, the downtown center has also opened for drive-through testing. There's no appointment that is needed for Florida residents with or without symptoms. All you need is your Florida driver's license. So that's important. The other thing that we have requested is we've asked if there's any chance that we might be able to get a testing site that is open after hours so that working individuals may not have to take off work to try and go and get one of these tests done in the 9 to noon time frame or the 9 to 5 time frame in case they can't make it during their lunch. So we'll keep you updated as we are trying to get that. And then I guess the only other thing I would mention is, there's a lot of talk about the antibody test.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, and so I think that from the antibody test perspective, the early numbers basically say we might not have a lot of Floridians that already have the antibodies, but that's a very small sampling that has already come out. So I would caution folks not to panic, but just be aware that as we get more robust antibody testing, you're probably going to hear that we may not have as many immunities built up already.
Well, that's important, everything that you've mentioned. And you gave a lot of information about testing sites specifically. On myescambia.com, we do have a link with that information, don't we? Okay, so we do on myescambia.com, just go there and you get the link to all those sites. When you're talking about COVID and the antibodies, there was a couple of things back and forth with the World Health Organization about whether or not an asymptomatic carrier could actually spread the disease. And there are a lot of mixed the funny thing about this whole thing is there's been so many mixed messages. As you know, Janice, we've had the directors of all the hospitals. We had an infectious disease specialist, Dr. Fausto DeVecchi and I've asked everyone, what is the difference between an asymptomatic person or a person who had it and has recovered, and can either one or both of them transmit the disease? And there's no one can give me an answer. There's no straight answer. So I think there'll be some PhD dissertations written about this whole thing, the way we've reacted to it, the way we've handled it, and really the impacts. But I'm just happy to see economically it appears as though we're coming back. But what I know about Escambia County, growing up here and living here, is we always seem to be at the tail end of the recovery. We're the first in and the last out for whatever reason. And so I am concerned about things going forward. And I am concerned about a second wave. When we talk about those new infection numbers, I know you were talking about the percent positive being at 3.6. Remember, for a while there was at 10%. People were really freaking out. So you're right, it is much lower now. And the other interesting thing to point out is if you look at the trend lines for the deaths in the state of Florida, it really is falling off a cliff. I mean, it's really going downward, which is a great thing. I mean, you look at a state like New York that's smaller than Florida, believe it or not, smaller than Florida, and they've had over 30,000 or close to 30,000 deaths.
And we're at 27,
700. So we've obviously, you're right. You're absolutely right. Governor DeSantis and his team, they take a lot of bullets, but they take a lot of body shots, but I think they've done a good job. I mean, the business community is upset and very frustrated with them because they didn't open up quick enough, but I think they've done just about the best that they could. I mean, obviously we all saw the disconnect between allowing, dental procedures like dental cleanings, but I couldn't go get a haircut. And then we saw the dichotomy of the hotels being able to open, but not the guy who owns a condo on the beach. He can't rent it. And then, of course, the most recent one was the restaurants can be open, serving margaritas on the patio, but the bar that has a patio can't. So there's been those little things here and there, but overall, I think, we're in phase 2 now. Most everything is open with, of course, albeit reduced capacity. But, I just want the thing to continue moving forward. I am concerned about the long-term economic impacts and implications. And that's part and parcel of why we have our guest, Scott Luth, here. Scott's going to talk about economic development. We've got a list of things that he and I have discussed over the week, and was happy that you're here, Scott. So why don't you start out and tell folks who you are, what you do, and kind of what your program's all about.
Sure, Jeff, I appreciate it again. Thank you so much for for allowing me to be here with you guys this morning. And Janice, we appreciate all your hard work and, on behalf of the county commission and the way that you guys have handled everything. And so it's been while a terrible circumstance, we've had a great relationship and continued conversation. So I want to thank you all for that to begin with. I'm Scott Luth, CEO of Florida West. Florida West is the organization that works with all of our business and industry. We are the designated economic development agency on behalf of Pensacola and Escambia County. We receive our funding from the city and the county to work with our business and industry sector to basically, when you boil it down, what we do is try to increase the overall wealth of the community. And so whether we work with small businesses or large businesses, the one thing that they always have in common is all of the companies that we work with make a product or service that's sold outside the region and therefore importing dollars into the community. And so we work very closely with our Chamber of Commerce. We work closely with the SBDC, but that's really the types of companies that we work with. And we're going to touch on some of the things I think as we go on today. But just from a high level, we do everything from run the community small business incubator, which we call the CoLab. We go out and talk and work with all of our existing business and industry, and then we recruit new companies to town. And then we also work and assist in developing sites and properties for companies to either expand onto or to locate in the community. And so that's what a lot of myself and my staff work on daily with our great partners with the city and the county. So just a little bit of background on who we are and who Florida West is. And so obviously we appreciate everybody's support. One of the things that we've done obviously over the last, feels like a year and a half, but it's only been about 90 days or more. Obviously with the onset of COVID and the pandemic. One of the things that we've always done is, and maybe your listeners don't know, I know you do, Jeff and Janice, but there's actually a part of the Emergency Operations Center that's specifically focused on business and industry, and it's called ESF 18.
Yep.
And so anytime we have a declared disaster, whether it's a storm or a pandemic or oil spill, the ESF 18 is activated just like all of the other support functions, during a disaster. And so we actually work very closely with the tourism department, the Chamber of Commerce and Florida West to really monitor the economic health of the community. And obviously then we have all of our partners beyond that. So here as it relates to COVID, our responsibility was to basically monitor, understand, and disseminate information out to our business sector. And so for the last 90 days, all three of your agencies here in the community have been extremely busy, following, reading, trying to interpret, and then advise our businesses on what the executive orders meant, when they took effect, when they came off, where they could get resources from the city and the county to react to those things. And so we've been spending a lot of energy really trying to monitor and keep up with the activities. I want to thank Todd Thompson with the Chamber of Commerce. We made the collective decision that he would sort of be the collection point for a lot of the information. He stood up a website and did a daily brief on behalf of his organization, but really on behalf of the entire community. So tourism would feed him information, we would feed him information, and so we really wanted to keep our business community attuned to what was happening. The other part of what we've been doing is obviously, and you're right, Rick Harper's got some amazing data, collectively as an individual, obviously UWF and the state of Florida. So we've been trying to monitor to see, what's going on in our community and what the health is of our community, as it relates to the impacts of the COVID, the pandemic, and more importantly, the impacts of the executive orders. As you mentioned, I think it was definitely the right thing to do the way they did it. But obviously by doing those and asking our businesses to reduce operations or fully close, that has a substantial impact to our economy. And we wanted to continue to monitor that.
Hey, Scott, let me interject a question for you real quick. When you talk about the incubator and helping a small business startup, did a couple of weeks back, maybe about a month back, we had a gentleman named Mike Silver on the show, and he's just a real creative guy, just a real go-getter. he ran college promotions. He would do like events at universities around the Southeast, and he's from here and he started out here, but the pandemic basically all but shut him down, and he had to transition very quickly and pivot. And he's done this really cool thing in District 1 out at the fairgrounds, where he's done a pop-up drive-in movie theater like the old days when we were in high school, and it's really taken off. It's my understanding now he's doing it here, Mobile, and multiple other places, and Pensacola was like the test bed. It was really interesting speaking with him, and it was just a great interview. And I've got to know him a little bit outside of this, but was curious, did he work with you? Is he one of the gentlemen who has gone through the collab? Do you know?
He is. Yeah, no, he's Paint You. Paint You is his company.
Right. Yeah.
And he sure was. He was actually one of our tenants or clients within the Small Business Incubator that obviously, that the city, the city and the county fund and allow us to work with those companies. But no, he was a great client. We're glad to have him for about 3 years.
He graduated from the program.
He graduated from the program, which is, again, these companies come in with a great idea and a great concept and usually a little bit of revenue. And we have a full-time business coach. A lot of people in the community know him. It's Patrick Rooney, just a great serial entrepreneur and business coach and consultant himself. And he's our full-time, director of the collab now and business coach there. And so he works with the companies, holds their hands, meet with them on a monthly basis, and really make sure that we provide the resources to help those companies grow. So yeah, he's a great company. Another company here in the town, which has done really well, that was with us, for probably almost 4 years, and that's Iris. Dr. Gupta's company actually started. Yeah, they actually started in an incubator as well and ended up taking, an entire floor. By the time we finally pushed them out, they were getting so big that I had to get them out of the building so we could bring more companies in. So no, we're obviously very proud of them and a great company as well. So we've had about 25 companies come through in the 8 years that I've been here. We got about 18 in the building now. And actually, we're waiting to have another board meeting to bring in 4 new companies here in the next month or so. So I think people are really looking at these opportunities of what they want to do. Do they want to start a business? And so we're excited about that.
No, I think that what a great conversation, because this is something that the county does. We help fund this, and what an amazing thing to do. And so somewhere out there is a young person in this challenging environment that we're in right now with COVID, but you can turn a challenge into an opportunity. So if you're a young person, or even someone switching careers, kind of changing gears midlife, and you have an idea that you really think, hey, I could sell this, and I could do something here at Pensacola, sell it. Tell everyone how they get involved, and how do they get plugged in with collab, and how can someone who wants to be an entrepreneur and has a great idea, how can they turn that into something?
Sure, definitely, Jeff. So again, we have several partners in the community. Obviously, we work very closely with the Small Business Development Center, and we're also working quite a bit with the Spring, with the Student Community Institute.
Right.
And so there's a lot of opportunities for folks to, try out their idea. Collectively, we as a community actually host Startup Weekend. And so we do that about once a quarter. And so we push the information out. So basically over a long weekend, about 2.5 days, we take you from concept to actually sort of a small business plan about how to create your company, how to move it forward. So be on the lookout for that. And so again, the companies that we're looking for in the collab are those folks that are going to make that new product or service sold outside the region. So if you want to open up a retail business or a restaurant, which are all wonderful for our community as well, SBDC can help you, the Spring can help you, and we've got other sources in the community. But that's really the ones that we're looking for, the ones that have that opportunity to scale. And but yeah, go to our website, get on our mailing list, look at our Facebook page as well. Patrick's putting those things out, and so when they do a startup weekend, we actually have one called Code Fest. So if you're an IT person and you want to create the next new app or software program, there's a Code Fest which does the same thing, specifically focused on IT, new and upcoming IT companies that we do, several times a year as well. So just really get engaged either through the Spring or through collab. We have a great entrepreneurial ecosystem here in our community.
We really do. And again, Scott, for the people who might be watching or watch the video or the recording later, what is that website? Does collab have a separate website, or is it all on Florida West's website? What are those sites?
Yeah, you can either come to floridawesteda.com or you can go to collab.com. Yeah, so either one will get you there.
Fantastic. And let's talk a little bit about how you're funded. Obviously, the city of Pensacola kicks in funding for this. The
Right.
county kicks in funding for this, and then you get state money. Tell them how the pie comes together to fund your organization.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. Yeah, so we're 80% publicly funded, through the city and the county, and then we're 20% privately funded, and so that gives us a little bit of flexibility, obviously, to do some things with the private dollars that we don't need to be doing with the public dollars. I mean,
Right.
we do a lot of travel, and where we're going to conferences and events. We obviously host clients in town and those types of things, and the private sector dollars allow us to do that. The public sector dollars, obviously take care of a lot of our overhead and those types of things. Like I said, it runs the operation of the collab, our rent and bills and all those types of things, and staffing we use with our public dollars. And so that's pretty much how we are funded. The county graciously supports us with $600,000 a year. And the city supports us with about $300,000 a year is what we get from the city of Pensacola. And then the remainder of our budget comes in from the private sector.
From the private.
So, yeah, it's great partnership.
For many years I was, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was going to say, and then we do special projects, as I know you're very familiar with through PDC, where we go after legislative dollars, state dollars, and grants that also then allow us to do project-specific things. So we've been obviously very successful, over the last 4 or 5 years, where we've brought in, probably $6 million plus to help us, build out one of our heavier industrial parks. And then obviously, as we move forward with some of the other parks and things in the community, we fully intend to do the same thing, is to bring those outside dollars in to offset and to match and make sure that our local tax dollars are going so much further with matching dollars coming in from the state or Triumph or whatever source that we can to be very project specific.
And one of those projects you briefly touched on it that a lot of us have been paying close attention to for a number of years, and I know it's been a special project for you and your team, is the Bluffs Heavy Industrial Park. Tell the folks, just to give the brief synopsis of what that park is, the millions of dollars you've been able to get from the state toward it, and what the ultimate goal is out there, and where it is. Tell them where it is.
No, when we looked at the community and where our assets were for future growth of companies and businesses here in the community, one of the, we obviously have the tech park, which is downtown, and we can talk about that in a minute, which is obviously for office and information technology and maybe headquarters space. We've got a couple other smaller industrial parks or commerce parks and industrial parks in the community, but actually most of those are out of property, which is a great thing.
Right.
We only have like 1 or 2 acres left in those. So we as a community start looking at, well, where's our next opportunity? And obviously we looked at Outlying Field 8, and then we also looked at the property which we call the Bluffs. The Bluffs is up where Ascend Manufacturing is located, the wastewater treatment facility, and obviously International Paper. And so those are all big, heavy industries that have very high wages, very advanced manufacturing for our community. And we do a lot of R&D up there. But also what's up there is you have the railroad. Again, you have the Gulf Power Generation Plant. We have 3 high pressure natural gas lines that come through there. And what's also very unique is we also are there on the Escambia River. So we actually have barge access. So those are all the amenities that your larger companies are looking for. And since we already have a concentration of those types of companies, we've been working very closely with ECUA and with Ascend to look at some of their out parcels and excess properties to actually develop them into potential sites for other kind of like type companies, which are very capital intensive, from a standpoint, but again, also very technical and high wage jobs for the community. So again, to date, we've done a lot of master planning, design and engineering. We're now going after construction money to actually start upgrading and developing some of the roads out there. But to date, we've been gracious to receive, through Governor Scott and now through Governor DeSantis's office, about $6 million to help us actually design and lay out that facility up there. So it's a great opportunity, and we've had a lot of inquiries, and some folks come to town to look, but eventually we'll find the right project that we can work with up there.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting. And again, that's heavy industrial type activity. Of course, that would not be something that you would put in some of the other commerce parks, and certainly not something that we would contemplate for OLF 8, being that it's in the vicinity of so many residents and things like this. You and I, we've had, there have been a couple of really good opportunities that have come along, and one of them didn't work out from Pennsylvania. And I don't want to go through that whole ugly thing, what happened there with that, but a lot of folks have said, well, wait a minute, why can't you put it all out there? Why can't you should be an open book and you should put it all out there. But you and I both know that when these companies decide to move and relocate, there's a lot of implications. Financial, they're worried about their staff. If the staff find out, oh no, I don't want to leave, Pennsylvania and go to Pensacola, and so tell folks about, because of the fact that you do a lot of prospecting and you have, folks that are, interested but haven't made the move yet. Tell folks about how it is that you're able to keep that confidential so that you don't blow these deals while at the same time you're using some public funds to do it. Explain how that works.
Yeah, when we work with a company, whether that's an existing industry that wants to expand, or whether, like you said, it's a new company that may be either expanding its operation or possibly relocating, those companies are wanting to maintain confidentiality for those variety of reasons. Like you said, one may be if it is a company that's relocating, they're obviously, concerned about their current location, their current staff, how that's going to impact them. But some of the companies we work with are publicly traded companies, and so therefore you can't disclose that information, or you run into a real issue with obviously with their investors and and their entire operation around their their growth and their stock, and and that confidential information that we have of how companies are working. So that's a lot of why we try to maintain that confidentiality with a company, and try to make sure that we're able to bring it up to a point where they're ready to go public with it, and we always want to get to that point, but the state does allow us to have, grants us confidentiality with our companies up to a total of 24 months.
24 months, yep, 2 years.
We can, it's 12 months at a time, is what it is. So we'll get a 12-month, ability to maintain confidentiality. If the company hasn't quite finished their project yet, we can actually ask for a second 12 months, where we don't have to disclose who they are. But usually, again, I would say 99% of the time, usually well within that 12-month period, the company's made their decision one way or the other, or we've actually had some type of public announcement and we're ready to move forward. Now there are occasions where that goes quite a bit longer, but that's really what we do. We try to provide as much information to the public, and obviously you all as commissioners and elected officials, as we can, up until the point except for the name of the company. So we'll tell you basically what industry sector they're in. We'll tell you what their wages are. We'll tell you how many people they plan to employ. We usually will provide, what their capital investment is going to be in the community. But beyond that, we try to be very sensitive of being able to pinpoint or say, okay, well, it's XYZ company, because again, they're trying to make that decision. And we've seen in other states where communities that have broken that confidentiality have lost major announcements. I mean, there's one or two, 5,000 employee automotive plants that have actually eliminated communities because they were not able to maintain confidentiality, and they were taken off the list. I mean, ones that were probably shortlisted where it was between them and maybe one or two other communities, and that company flat out said, we are not going there. It's a community that we thought we had trust in, and they broke our trust. And we've seen it happen, and so we try to maintain that and be very careful with the requested confidentiality of companies.
I'll tell you what a great point that you make right there. So people think, oh, what does it matter if I happen to have this knowledge and I'm just going to pass it along? Because what does it matter? That's a great illustration right there, Scott. It matters because companies pay attention, CEOs pay attention. More importantly, their employees pay attention, and they know what you know and I know, and Janice knows, and everyone knows. If that comes out prematurely, it upends everything. People will walk off the job. Well, I'm going to start looking for a new job right away, and so suddenly they have problems where they're at right now before they've even moved. And then, so I think it's interesting, but I think the big takeaway here is if public dollars are involved, eventually all of that stuff will be known. It's kind of like, it's not dissimilar to our shade meetings. When we have confidentiality, eventually it all comes out at the right time, but you put something out before it's time, it's a real problem. As you just illustrated, there are I cannot imagine if we lost 5,000 jobs, that would call for some resignations so far as I'm concerned. I mean, whoever blew the whistle on that should be fired or should resign. That's why we can't ever let that happen here. But I want to talk about some good positive news, because there's a lot of folks. I mean, I'm not going to say a lot. There are some folks who say it's a waste of money. It's a waste of taxpayer money to go out and prospect for great companies to come to your area and import revenue into your area by exporting products and services. I happen to disagree in the strongest terms. I think that's probably now, especially in this economy we're in now, probably one of the most important things we can be doing. And we've had a track record of success here. And I want to talk about that because there's a lot of people that they go off of anecdotal things and they say, oh, look, these commerce parks are a failure and everything like this. But you and I know that that's not the case. Ellison, very, very successful, beat the projections, making all kinds of money, supports thousands of jobs, brings in millions of dollars. Marcus Point sold out. Heritage Oaks sold out. Mid-County Commerce Park. What's the status of that one right now? I know they had some challenges in terms of the topography and the way it's built out, but how are we doing up there at the mid up on Highway 29? The Commerce.
We're let's see, we put 2 companies in there. Gosh, was it 3 years ago? So there's my knowledge. I think there's only one lot in phase 1 that's left that's publicly owned. There's a couple privately owned pieces of property up there that one of them's for sale, one of them's not for sale. But again, and folks, I guess, bought those a long time ago, Janice, you may know, but they think they bought them on spec, hoping that they would sell them one day in the future. But as far as publicly owned property, we actually have a client right now that we're working with that has an interest in that last acre and a half. In phase 1, and we've got a client that's having some early conversations about possibly beginning to move into phase 2. But you are right, the phase 2 part has some pretty rough topography up there, and so we're trying to work through some of those issues right now on what they want to do, where they want to go, and what the development costs might be to put them into phase 2. But you talked about one of the again, when we do talk about economic development, and again, I keep going back to, again, the clients we work with are the ones that are selling those products and services outside the region. And because of that, they can also locate anywhere they want to.
Right.
So every project that we work is competitive. So, it's unlike the restaurant that wants to come to town. They're coming to town because they want to sell their goods and services to our residents. And the only way they do that is to locate in our county.
Exactly.
All of our companies would be just as happy to locate in Alabama, Georgia, Texas, because they can make those products and services and sell them because they're not selling to the local community.
Right.
It's competitive in nature. And so sometimes when we get in discussions with the public, and you and I both know this, they're under the false assumption that, well, that company would have come here anyway. Well, no,
Wrong.
They do not have to be in our county. We are working with them. We're trying to show that we got a great community. We want to show that they can be successful, that we want to show that we've got the right labor. But at the end of the day, they are looking for opportunities to offset their early startup risks. And so our competitive states, competitive communities are willing to help them offset those early costs in starting a brand new operation. And so that does weigh into their decisions when it comes down to their top 3 or 4 communities where they say, okay, we can be successful in these top 3 or 4 communities, and then where's our lower cost of business? And that's when incentives come into play. It's always at the very end. And we've done that with a lot of projects. Our county has been very aggressive in that. But because of that, I will have to say, compared to a lot of our counterpart communities across the South, Pensacola has fared very well during natural disasters, man-made disasters, and obviously the pandemic. I mean, yes, we have a lot of folks that have been impacted, but in consideration, all of our manufacturers in Navy Federal operated during this pandemic.
Yes, they did. Now, believe it or not, though, the people that got hurt were the hospitals. I know of one person, an executive, and I'm not going to name who she is or where she works, but at one of the big hospitals, they were let go. They had a little, they had to really tighten the belt because they were stopped from doing all their elective procedures. So they took a big hit. Now, I know the federal government's going to backstop certain industries. Hospitals will be no different. Cruise lines, the airlines. It seems to me, they backstop the big guys. It's small mom and pops. They got to fight the red tape, navigate these different programs, whatever the case might be. So, but yeah, I mean, you're right. We fared well, and I thank God every day. I mean, I'm very thankful. I had kept my job, but my son was laid off for 3 months. Didn't get one dime in unemployment. Still just applied over and over, not one red cent. So that you talk about a broken, busted system. I know so many people who've applied. They've been out of work 3 months. Now they're back to work. They still haven't got the first nickel for the months they were out. So we fared well, but there's still a lot of our fellow citizens here locally that are hurt.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to diminish that. And obviously, again, but it's, but because we do have a diverse economy between the military and between our manufacturing business.
Yes.
And what's allowing those is now that our service businesses are allowed to reopen,
Mm-hmm.
we still have the money still there. It's waiting to be able to be spent back in our stores and our restaurants. And so, for the most part, I mean, again, like I said, I don't want to diminish our hospitality and tourism industry and those employees and then some of the ripple effect. But the good part, I think that goes back into your comment earlier about, about the, how the unemployment rate actually went down, and we had a lot of people because the stores started opening up, and those folks were basically be able to go back to work very quickly. And so, so I think, again, that's still the lesson learned as we move forward. We have to continue to fight to diversify our economy so that way we can weather that next storm. And so just like you harden the building, and make it more resilient, our community has to continue to fight to be more resilient in the future as well. And so that's why we do what we do, and we focus on the companies that we focus on, everything from entrepreneurship, the one-person office, all the way up to the, to the most recent, 2,000 employees with ST Engineering, we're working with as well. So we work on all extremes, but we're working to make the community more resilient.
Janice, I want to ask you about, at our last meeting, we talked about the micro grant program, and we had a speaker that came out, and I believe that you and your staff provided additional information. I think Commissioner May wanted to know about, the diversity of the different companies. And I know that you guys sent out some emails, but can you talk a little bit about that program? And I know, it's not really well funded. I think we had like $100,000 that we tried to help and give out grants and stuff. And that was spread out among, I want to say, over 100 companies. Give us a little background on that.
Ours was over 40 companies because we had us and, the county, and then we also had the city participate as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so those all did get put out. The other things that we also had going on at the same time is Gulf Power had already done a micro grant program, and then also Santa Rosa County and the city of Milton. I think since then, Navarre and a couple other places have also participated. And then I see where Gulf Power is going to do another $300,000. The benefit that we had by working with SBDC is they're able to look at all the different grants and ensure that people are not double, triple dipping.
Right.
Not because we don't want to help everybody multiple times, but because, trying to spread it out. So our grant had a couple of different qualifications that the other grants have not had. We did ask them to specifically look at minority businesses. We asked them to look at 0 to 10 employees and then 11 to 20. And the reason why you say 0 is a sole proprietor is considered 0, even though there is a person there, a legitimate person there. And we did tend to give more money in the 0 to 10 category because we had more people apply in that category. And then, so we had a couple, and the other issue that we had is we had the geographic constraints. Our commissioners wanted to ensure that we did spread them out throughout the districts to the best ability that could be accomplished based on the folks that applied. And so ours, I would say, based on the comments from the folks that were on the program, ours was probably the most difficult to implement for free. And I know, we did give the university the percentage to help manage the check cutting. But on the other hand, SBDC did do this with 0 commission, for lack of a better term, or a cost from us directly to them. I don't believe that Scott or the chamber, I don't believe PEDC, Florida West, or the chamber, they didn't provide any compensation to them either to do that work. So I'm very thankful for what they did. I understand that it may not be the most perfect outcome for everyone because it is hard to apply for something and then not get the grant. But like I said, I know that Gulf Power, the good news is we are using the same basic format across the Gulf Coast. And so Gulf Power is going to try and do another $300,000. And, there are some issues related to confidentiality, like you and Scott were talking about earlier. Once you agree to be consulted by the SBDC, they have an obligation. It's a federal requirement to keep your information confidential because you are a client of theirs. And now that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't provide us the names of the folks that applied, but it does mean that they will not be able to tell us why people were denied or give us like all of their financial background and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So there are, there are issues in dealing with an open public government and trying to provide that resource. But then there are, like you said earlier, there are also confidentiality laws that for the right reasons probably need to be continue to be protected.
Well, I want to talk about good news and great accomplishments. And, because it's easy to be negative and look at the downtown tech park and say, well, look, you said you'd do this, and then it didn't happen. The tech park really, it came to fruition during the depths of the Great Recession. There were some initial tenants that had agreed. Scott, you and I have talked about this multiple times. And due to those conditions at that time, they were not able to make the move and to build, and they weren't able to get the incentives that they needed to do so, and they went other locations. So it sat vacant for a while. And the reason it sat vacant, Scott, and I want to get into this a little bit because people like to beat us up and they like to take shots at us, but they don't know all the information. And the fact of the matter is we were very, very constrained in what sort of business or industry we could bring into that location. I mean, if we had carte blanche and to be able to do whatever we want with that property, we would have done something by now. There'd be something sitting there and we'd have some jobs generated. But talk a little bit about that, Scott, about the fact that we were constrained, and had we chosen to do something different that was outside of what Space Florida had allowed the money for, we would have had to pay a pretty significant penalty, in monetary penalty. So let's talk a little about that, and then give the quick brief background of what the current plan is for the tech park and what we're trying to do in marketing it.
Sure, Jeff, I'd be happy to. Yeah, the tech park, was concepted back in what, 05, 06, somewhere in that time frame. And we did. We had two anchor tenants, IT companies that had interest in coming into the park. And so the community went through the process of trying to get federal money. So this is federal money that actually put the roads, the sidewalks, the lights, and those types of things. So it was the Federal Economic Development Administration is the one that funded it. And when you do an application to them, they fund that project. So it wasn't to fund a speculative, piece of property for us to go out and market. It was specifically a park that would have anchor tenants in it, creating jobs. And so even though, through the recession and the companies that had to make decisions to do, to basically go other places, with their operation, those strings never went away with EDA. Always the intent that we had to bring in two like type companies creating similar jobs for the community over the years. And so we've obviously worked to do that. We've talked to numerous companies. We've shown them the park, and a number of those companies came to the community and went ahead and leased space,
somewhere else
throughout the community, which
right.
which is not a bad thing. I mean, that's we're grateful that they did that. They filled in vacant space. But and you could talk with any one of our wonderful land developers here in the community, but to have enough clients, enough space to build a 60,000 square foot, Class A or Class B office space, a lot of things all have to come together at once to justify that kind of expenditure, or even go get a loan, from the bank to build it. I guess since, in the 8 years that I've been here, we've seen, Quint Studer and Justin Beck build some property down on the waterfront to do that privately, and that's great, and we're happy that they did that. But obviously, they built their buildings there based on their research, and at the time, that made the most sense to put them there. But they also inherently had, anchor tenants. I mean,
right.
When Quint built his building, he had Studer, and Studer went in the majority of the building, so therefore he had a built-in tenant. Same thing with Justin and his operation, and he pretty well had the locked-in tenants to do it at that location, which is great. And so even though we've talked to a lot of companies, we haven't had the economies, we haven't had the size of businesses that needed that much square footage to build a brand new building. And so we're continuing to work through that. So that's kind of where we are right now. So what we've done, obviously under the direction of the PEDC, is we've put together a solicitation where we are sending that out across the United States. Kind of looking for either somebody that wants to come in and redevelop or develop the site, or possibly maybe there is somebody out there, especially now with everybody reassessing Do we want to stay in the big city? Do we need a new office because
Exactly.
we need to redesign space for, for the new social distancing and the ability to work at home and work at the office when we need. So I think the timing is good as there's always uncertainty and people trying to make decisions. We have a very long lead time intentionally. We sent the proposal out June 1st, but we don't expect proposals in until October.
Right.
We want to let the market have enough time to think through what good projects want to be. We want to make sure that companies have enough time to think what their new strategy is going to be, but we want to make sure that they have Pensacola and a great piece of property here in our downtown community to hopefully work into their decision process. And so we are currently entertaining any opportunity. So it doesn't have to be technology based. It does not have to be office based. We want developers that have a great idea of what's going to be highest and best, not for the property, but for the community. And so I know the board's going to look at it from that perspective. So any ideas welcome to submit. We want a lot of great creative ideas with what to do with the property, but I fully expect the board to say, okay, could this project, what's the benefit of this project to the community?
Mm-hmm.
Is this the highest and best location for that particular project? And if it is, then we'll go into negotiations with that client or with that developer to try to put a deal together. So we're proactively trying to market it, and I think the timing's right to do that. And at the same time, we are working some proposals and things in the background that still may come to fruition, that would hopefully be in the mix as well.
Well, and I'm not going to give away any specific details, but I want to talk around a project that I know that you and your team are working, because we've met out at the location. Right. And but just to give the sense of what's out there and what resources are available, we have amazing entrepreneurs here in Escambia County, and there's one gentleman in particular in my district that's doing incredible stuff. But I'm constrained here. I can't say when. I don't want to give any part of it away, but I'll just say he's doing international stuff. He's traveling international. He's importing stuff from around the world, and now he's creating things. He's invested in equipment. I mean, high-tech, amazing equipment in District 1. He's purchased additional land. He's moving forward. And I was able to plug him in with you guys. We've met out there. And is there anything you can say about that without giving too much away? But I mean, it's exciting what this guy is doing and the good jobs he's going to bring to District 1 in Escambia County, because of some of the support and some of the guidance that Florida West has been able to provide. What can you say about that without giving?
I'd be happy to. No, again, and we do. We have a lot of these conversations, throughout the year and this is an entrepreneurial, second generation, company that is expanded over the years. They want to add square footage to their operation. They want to hire residents in our community. But like a lot of our companies, they'll call us with a challenge or an issue, and so with this, obviously with this company, they have an infrastructure challenge. And so we're working very closely, obviously, with you and Janice and maybe looking to help them find, resources to take care of the infrastructure challenge, which will allow them to expand their operation, bring in, $1 million worth of equipment plus, open up a new product line for him, in his operation. So those are types of things that we do. Is we just, we get in, we work with a company, we understand what their challenges are, with what they need to be successful. And if there's ways for us to help them, through working with y'all or the city, then that's what we try to do. We try to identify and match those resources, which then allow them to expand their operations. Because the last thing we want them to do is to get to a point, well, I can't stay here and operate.
Right. I got to move to New Orleans or Atlanta. And you're like, no. We want you here. We want you here.
This is one of these companies that I can promise you that our neighbors would love to come in and steal from us.
You know they would.
And take them to their community and let him set up shop and hire their residents. And so it's like I said, we work half a dozen or more of those type of projects, and sometimes they go public and sometimes they don't. Sometimes we'll work with a company and we'll help them out, but they say, look, no, we don't need to have an open house. We don't want to go public with it. And so there's projects that we work that community will never know about, but we know that we actually supported that company and helped them with their issue or challenge and those types of things. I'll just give you one small example, and I don't think it's public, because I'm sure people saw it, but we even helped out, Ferguson Field, working with you all to help them get the tree line cut down because the trees had grown into their flight path.
Yeah, that's not that's not good. You don't want that.
Yeah, so it's everything from from companies like that just call and have a need support. We try to link them to the right resources, and obviously the county and Janice and her team have always been extremely responsive to help us work through those issues and find solutions. But it doesn't make headlines. It
Right.
solves the problem, help the company continue to maintain and create jobs, but it's not necessarily newsworthy.
Well, and that's why I love this opportunity, because this will be covered, and there are folks that will talk about the discussions that we have here, and that's what I like. I want these stories out there, and of course, we all know the story of Navy Federal Credit Union. They were brought in the early 2000s. We had a Heritage Oaks Commerce Park out there, and they took one section and they brought in a call center, and there was some resistance to that from the community. I moved in 2004, and I know as they started to grow their footprint, there were some folks out there in the Beulah community who were very uneasy and not really going along with the program. But as that developed, and here's an example, Scott, of what now, I don't think you and this entity were involved in those early stages, but subsequently, you guys have plugged into that and the community and the county, but we've offered them economic development tax abatement credits, and that's allowed them to build, when it's all said and done, and according to Keith Hoskins, who I spoke with recently about this, it'll be like $1.2 billion that they've invested in infrastructure here in Escambia County. 10,000 jobs, when it's all said and done with a $500 million payroll. There are still people to this day, I will tell you, that hate Navy Federal Credit. Not a lot of them, but they're out there. You meet them in certain areas out in that community. They liked it the way it was before with open field. They didn't like the helicopter field either, but they liked it the way it was, the 4-H field, and they hate Navy Federal. But I'll tell you what, I cannot have a rational conversation with anyone that believes that. I believe Navy Federal Credit Union coming to Escambia County was probably one of the greatest things that's happened here ever. I mean, it's no different than bringing a new military mission, a complete new military mission here. And by the way, I'll segue into, I've read that Grover Robinson, the mayor, has put a plug in for the Pensacola area to have the Space Force brought here. And I don't know if that's a serious situation, Scott, but boy, that would be something. They could piggyback with the training at NAS Pensacola. I mean, wow, wouldn't that be something? That'd be very interesting. But the story of Navy Federal, I think, is a smashing success. And so on a smaller scale, maybe that's a grand slam home run, right? You're talking baseball. I think a strong double, maybe even a triple, is going to be ST Aerospace. And you and I went to Singapore. We met with those people. Obviously, Ashton Hayward, the previous mayor, was a big cheerleader for that project, did the heavy lift. Grover took the mantle and he pushed it. And we got that over the line. And I just think that's such a tremendous victory. And a lot of folks don't realize the gravity of it. With Navy Federal, for instance, we would not be getting a 4-lane road. That's a $22 million investment, just the segment in Beulah, $22 million for that portion. That wouldn't have happened without Navy Federal. We're going to have a $25 million interchange. That's coming. It would not happen were it not for Navy Federal. Now, because people think we should invest every dollar that we get in infrastructure. Build it and they will come. But build it and they will come is not a model that works in real business, right? You have to have a combination of things. And one of the things you have to have is incentives. Without the incentives, Navy Federal wouldn't have come. Without the incentives, ST Aerospace wouldn't be here. And without incentives, a lot of the companies you work with wouldn't be here as well. So I get on my soapbox a little bit because there are people that are very myopic and they say it should just be public safety and infrastructure, but they're wrong. They're wrong. You bring a Navy Federal in, you bring an ST Aerospace in, that generates jobs, home purchases, retail expenditure. I mean, it just triples out, and that gives you the revenue to do what's necessary with the roads, the sidewalks, the lights, and everything else. That's my perspective. I believe that I'm right. And, but let's talk about ST Aerospace. We went to Singapore, we signed the deal, $225 million deal with Triumph and a lot of different components under the county. Janice, we kicked in like 16 million total. I mean, we're on the hook for a lot. I threw a 1.5 million from OLF 8 over into the project to make it happen. So where are we at with ST Aerospace right now, Scott?
Again, the project is definitely moving on. So between Project 1, which was Hangar 1, and then obviously the second project, which is the full out campus, it's about $240 million total project. With the vast majority of those dollars coming in from other sources and outside the community. Obviously we did put a lot of it in between the city and the county to make that project happen. But again, the vast majority of it's coming well, and also the private sector. I mean, the company themselves are putting in, significant millions of dollars into the project, into hangars and aprons that they're never going to own. It's always going to be a publicly owned asset for the community, that they helped fund in addition to our local community. So those hangars will be there forever, and obviously we hope ST's there forever as well. But if they're not, those hangars will be there for any other company that wants to come in and use those and create jobs for our citizens. So
how many jobs total, and what is the status of their industry given the pandemic? You and I talked a little bit offline about this, because some people are concerned. I was too. Tell the folks what the status is.
Yeah, so the contractual number of jobs is a little over 1,700, but in reality, it's going to be over 2,000 jobs. But contractually, with the company, it'll be 1,700 give or take jobs that the company has. With hangar number one, they have a commitment to bring in 300 jobs within the first several years of operation. They've only been in operation for a little over 2 years now, from the time they actually got the ability to use the facility itself. And so they're around 200. So they're about 100 off from, and not off. I mean, we still have a year. We still have a whole other year for them to get up to their initial 300 jobs. And so they're about 200. So they're tracking very well with that. The second phase is obviously all the contracts and agreements to build the facility are in place. And we're actually trying to look for a groundbreaking date, in the coming months, once people can travel again, to do an official groundbreaking on the second hangar out there, and then obviously moving to hangars 3 and 4, as well as an administration building that will support the entire operation. So it's from a construction and contractual standpoint, it's moving just as we expected it to be. Nothing is behind schedule.
Good.
From that standpoint. And then, like I said, the airport will be going to construction very quickly as soon as they finalize so they're going into engineering. That's what they're doing. They're actually engineering the project right now. And so a lot of meetings and work being done behind the scenes before we actually start seeing the ground being broken. But it is tracking very well. The number of jobs here are doing good. One of the things that we've talked about, which we are fortunate with this project, especially with Hangar 1, it was always intended to be cargo. So your FedExes, your UPSs, so they're not passenger, operation out there. It's actually cargo, and we obviously know what the shipping world has done right now with the amount of at-home packages between the Amazons and all the other online shopping that's out there has really has not impacted the number of aircraft coming in and out of Pensacola that much, considering with the passenger plane. And most folks, if they don't realize, when the passenger planes aren't flying, all the cargo that's normally in those aircraft are now also shifted over to cargo planes, which again, and even Hangar 1 and Hangar 2 and we think possibly the other hangars are again, we're more of a cargo MRO operation than a passenger MRO. We'll see what their product mix does over time, which again, I think puts us in a good situation, not only currently, but also in the future, just because those shipments they're not going down. I mean, you look at the lines for companies like that, it's going to still be a lot of air cargo and a lot of air shipment. And so I think we feel very comfortable about their position, about their long-term growth as it relates to the product mix that they'll be bringing here to the community. So they're doing well. One of the things we just continue to encourage folks, take advantage of our education system. We have academies in the high school. We have the program at George Stone. We're looking at future programs in the region, to add other MRO and aviation engineering, program management within aviation. We're working very closely with some of our schools to launch these programs because, again, they need great talented citizens here in Escambia County to go to work for them. And so we're doing a good job recruiting now. But once they start opening up, hangars 2, 3, and 4, we really need folks that love to be outside, work around aircraft, learn a new trade. And as we know that, just like Navy Federal, it's not, call centers is a big part of what they do, but they have HR jobs, they have IT jobs, they have security jobs, they have program management jobs, they have, marketing, business development. All of that will be at ST Engineering as well. So just because you may not have an interest in in working on the aircraft, you may have an interest in finance side of it, accounting side of it, management side of it, sales, HR. I mean, so it's going to create a number of jobs over and above just the mechanic jobs that we think that are associated with the project.
And let's briefly, and that segues into a perfect topic. And I can't believe how quick an hour goes, but I'm just very passionate about this topic. But in speaking with the guys from ST and you and others, they have suppliers that they do $10, $12 million a year in business with right now. And when we talk about, well, wouldn't it be great if we could bring some of those suppliers into the Escambia County market, the Pensacola area? And OLF 8, I believe, provides an opportunity for some of that. We've got the OLF 8 property out in Beulah in District 1. A lot of stuff happening in District 1. All of Navy Federal, District 1, OLF 8, District 1. These other big projects we're talking about that we can't really reveal, District 1. So a lot's going on in District 1 behind the scenes to generate jobs so that people, when they graduate from high school, you talk about taking advantage of the schools and what they have to offer. When I graduated from Pensacola High School in the mid-'80s, there was just that it didn't exist unless you had an inn at Champion or St. Regis, whatever it was back then, or you had somehow, a way to get in with the federal government down at the base. There just weren't a lot of opportunities. And that's why I left the community when I was 18 and I didn't want to go. And so one of the things I've been passionate about, Scott, since I've been on this board is doing things to provide jobs for students. So when they graduate, they don't have to leave. They can have a career and really look at Navy Federal, 10,000 jobs. How many kids have graduated and gone into great jobs? I know a number of them, and they don't have to leave. They don't have to go to Atlanta, Tampa, California. And to me, that's success. And if they're good jobs, good paying jobs, they provide the tax base necessary to really improve our infrastructure and give the quality of life that's out there. But so OLF 8 is a unique opportunity. And just briefly, we had the kickoff meeting this week with DPZ, had a very, very great conversation. Lots of gnashing of teeth, when we finally hammered out a compromise agreement. But just so everyone is on the same page and knows the exact truth, the county acquired that property, and it took a number of years. We couldn't just write a check to the Navy. We had all these things we had to do, just jump through hoops of fire to get it done. But it was always a jobs program for the county, a county-wide jobs program. And as we got very close to the finish line, of course, some other folks came in and, decided that they wanted to do some things differently. And unfortunately, it kind of pulled away really a lot of the potential of what we could do with OLF 8. But we did salvage a compromise which allows for at least at a minimum the creation of at least 1,000 good jobs out there. So with that, obviously we're going to create some amenities for the community, maybe some amenities for the region, but importantly, we're still going to create jobs out there. So Scott, when we talk about ST and things like that, if we can carve out a portion of that field for an organization that perhaps supplies an ST Aerospace or supplies an Ascend, isn't that a great location right there on the interstate, especially if we get that second interchange? I mean, what do you see as the possibilities out there?
Yeah, Jeff, again, I've been involved with working through Outlying Field 8, since I got here 9 years ago. And it's taken us that long to get to a point where we're now master planning the site.
Right. And
a lot of volunteers and people in the community have been involved in that. But when we talk about it internally, it's always been the plan to have one of the nicest pieces of property coming into the state of Florida. Eventually it will be the first exit coming in from the west. And so, and when you've got $1 billion plus development that Navy Federal's put in there, no one wants to take away from that.
Of course.
So with the appropriate, design guidelines, covenants, you can develop an extremely, beautiful, mixed use commerce park. And that's really what I hope that we end up with one day to accomplish exactly what you're looking at, with the appropriate, streets and gutters and landscaping and setbacks. And, you can have a beautiful building sitting there, but you could be making some of the most high-tech aviation parts in the world inside of it, creating great jobs for the community. But from the outside, it looks like an extension of the campus and, of any other place that you would want to be. And I do agree that with 500 plus acres, having support amenities, along the frontage that supports the neighborhood, that supports the business and industry out there is a perfect strategy, And so I think under your leadership and leadership of the county to bring in a master planning firm to visualize that and understand and land balance that, makes a lot of sense. Because as we all know, you're selling the frontage by the square foot and you're selling the back by the acre. you know, and then you're allowed to take those dollars and offset the cost to build the roads and the sewer and the water and those things to manage it. So I'm excited where we're going. I think there's a great opportunity to have a blend. I think there's a way to complement what obviously what Navy Federal's investment has done out there. So you have something that looks like it all matches and it comes together. But at the end of the day, you end up with an asset for the community that is second to none of any other, you know, county that's in the state of Florida. I mean, it's a great opportunity to accomplish everything that we want to accomplish because it's such a large site. And so I'm excited about it. I mean, I really am, and I think we're moving in a great direction. You know, I've got projects in our pipeline that I think would be a great fit out there, that would meet the definitions that we're looking at, you know, and so we're going to continue to work through those and work with with you and Janice and your team and the consultant to, you know, to see if it is the right location that's the highest and best use and really supports the community. It's a great opportunity.
Well, I look forward to that. And I want to let everyone know that the community can weigh in on this as well. There's a master planning firm out of Miami, DPZ Design, world class. I mean, top of the line. They went through a competitive solicitation process. They got the bid. They're going to be taking input from folks, stakeholders like us, the county, Scott Luth, but also from you. If you live in the area, if you live anywhere in the county, make your voice heard. Make sure you attend the charrettes. They're going to have to do some online. Given the COVID thing, it's not necessarily going to be the way it always has been with static displays and a lot of people in a room. But by all means, make your voice heard because we got to get this right. I mean, I think like you said, Scott, there's a way that we can get a win for everyone. We can get amenities for the community, and we can also set aside enough acreage to allow us to create the jobs we need to recoup a lot of the money we put in. We did spend about $18 million to get that property. Now we have recouped $4 million from Navy Federal, selling them a slice, but we still have 14 million that's out, and we want to collect that money for the taxpayers and do it intelligently. So I hate to say it, but we're out of time. We had an hour. Scott Luth, CEO of Florida West, thank you for being here this morning. Of course, as always, Janice Gilley, thank you for being here. Next week, really interesting topic. We're going to talk with Jenna Melancon. She runs Gulf Coast Diplomacy, and she does exchange programs with foreign nationals in and out of the community. They've been really decimated by the whole COVID thing. We're going to talk with her about what she does, what sorts of impacts COVID-19 has had on her organization, and what she believes the way forward is going to be, and really some of the benefits of her program. We've had diplomats from other countries coming to our meetings. It's very, very interesting. It's just it's an interesting topic, but it's also interesting the way that COVID-19 has just decimated her ability to bring people and have them travel around. So look forward to that next week. And then we've got some other exciting guests coming after that. And again, I appreciate you guys getting up early, Janice. You give a great update every week, and appreciate you being here. Scott Luth, keep up the great work. You are doing great work, even though there are people that you know second guess everything you do, and every time we spend a dime on economic development, they second guess it while they have relatives that work at Navy Federal and ST Aerospace. It's amazing to me. It's just amazing. But these things don't happen in a vacuum. You have to be out there beating the bushes. You have to be out there prospecting. It's no different than sales. I mean, you don't land a sale every single day, but you just keep hammering it. And when you do, and you get the Navy Federal and the ST and the Ascend and International Paper and things like this, it makes our community better. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank everyone who joined us this morning, and we'll see you next week. Have a great rest of the week.